The morning sun filtered softly through the lace curtains as the house buzzed with the kind of nervous energy that only a wedding day can bring. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the faint aroma of brewing coffee and the crisp rustle of silk gowns being adjusted. I sat quietly in my favorite armchair, a silent observer amid the whirlwind of laughter, chatter, and clinking glassware. Watching my granddaughter move gracefully between family and friends, radiant with joy and innocence, stirred a swell of emotions that I struggled to contain. I am the matriarch of this family now, the keeper of memories, and the bearer of burdens few could understand. It has been decades since the secret first took root in my heart, a shadow I vowed to carry alone, shielding those I loved from the truth that might shatter the fragile peace we had crafted. Around me, the air was thick with celebration, yet inside, a storm brewed quietly, a tempest born of years spent wrestling with silence, regret, and a fierce desire to protect. The laughter felt distant, the smiles almost hollow beneath the weight of what I held back. Memories flickered through my mind like old photographs fading at the edges, times of love intertwined with pain, moments of warmth shadowed by fear. I saw the faces of those I had lost, and the ones who had never truly known the whole story. The contrast between the joyful scene before me and the turmoil inside was like watching a beautiful painting slowly peel away to reveal a darker canvas beneath. The family gathered around the polished dining table, their faces glowing with happiness and hope, unaware of the years of silence that had woven the fabric of our lives so tightly. My hands, resting on my lap, trembled slightly, the familiar tension of holding a secret so heavy it felt like a physical weight. I thought about the promises I made long ago to keep this truth buried, to spare my children and grandchildren from the consequences I feared would follow. Yet, as I watched my granddaughter's laughter, so pure and untainted, I wondered if the time had come for the secret to see the light of day. There is a peculiar loneliness in being the guardian of a truth that threatens to unravel the very foundation of your family. It is a silent vigil, an unspoken burden that sits heavy on the soul. I have carried it through countless birthdays, holidays, and quiet nights when the house was still and the world seemed far away. Each smile shared, each warm embrace given, was tinged with the knowledge that beneath our surface, harmony lay a fissure that could break open at any moment. Today, amidst the celebration, that fissure seemed closer than ever. The joy around me was a fragile veneer, and beneath it, I felt the ache of all the years spent hiding, the sacrifices made to keep peace at any cost. But peace built on secrets is a brittle thing, and sometimes the silence between loved ones grows louder than the words we never say. As the day unfolded, the music swelled and the voices rose in cheerful chorus. I remained still, a quiet sentinel at the heart of this gathering. I was a woman shaped by time and trial, by the choices made in shadows and the hope that love might yet endure despite the weight of hidden truths. In this moment, on the brink of a new chapter for my family, I felt the first stirrings of a resolve that had lain dormant for too long. The celebration would carry on, bright and full of promise, but inside me, the calm before the storm was breaking. The secret I swore to take to the grave was ready to speak. To the outside world, our family was the picture of perfection, a seamless tapestry woven with smiles, celebrations, and a reputation built on tradition and respectability. Everyone admired the polished surface we presented. Sunday dinners filled with laughter, holiday gatherings where the children played in crisp clothes, and the kind of neighborly warmth that made people say, "That family has it all." But as with any carefully crafted facade, there were shadows lurking just beneath the light, fractures hidden behind the painted smiles. I grew up in a household ruled by my parents' rigid beliefs and unwavering expectations, where silence was not only golden, but necessary. My father was a stern man, his voice like the sharp crack of a whip that demanded obedience and perfection. My mother, though gentler, carried the same weight of unyielding standards, her eyes always watching, always judging, her quiet disapproval more painful than any raised voice. They believed in keeping the family name untarnished at any cost, and that belief shaped every word left unsaid, every secret buried deep beneath layers of denial and fear. There was no room for weakness or mistakes in their world. Love was measured by adherence to rules, and loyalty meant protecting the image they crafted, even if it meant hiding truths that clawed at the soul. I remember the way my mother's smile never quite reached her eyes during our family portraits, as if she was holding back a storm no one else could see. The pressure to maintain the illusion was suffocating, like a heavy quilt wrapped too tightly around our lives, smothering us in its heat while the cold truth remained just out of sight. Growing up, I learned to carry the weight of expectations like a shield, masking my own fears and doubts beneath a practiced calm. The family dinners were a performance, a dance where every gesture and word had to be flawless, every emotion carefully curated to avoid raising questions. Yet behind closed doors, the silence was deafening. It was in that silence that the secret I now guard was conceived, nurtured, and sealed away with promises I made to myself long before I understood its full impact. My parents never spoke of the past, never acknowledged the fractures beneath our family's gleaming exterior. I sensed the shadows in their hurried conversations that abruptly changed when I entered the room, in the way their eyes darted away when I asked too many questions. I understood early on that some things were too dangerous to reveal, that the truth carried consequences far heavier than any lie could. That knowledge settled in my bones, a cold, immovable weight that shaped every choice I made as I grew older. The legacy I inherited was not one of warmth and openness, but of secrets carefully guarded behind polite smiles and well-mannered silence. It is a legacy that has shaped me, defined the boundaries of my love and loyalty, and left me wrestling with the cost of protecting a family that thrives on appearances. Even now, as I watch my granddaughter prepare to step into her own future, I cannot help but feel the pull of those old shadows, the echoes of a past that refuses to stay buried. The family's history is written not just in the happy memories we share, but in the unspoken pain we endure, the wounds hidden beneath the surface that no one outside this house will ever see. It is this legacy of smiles and shadows that has forged me, a woman bound by love and silence, standing at the edge of a truth that has waited too long to be told. The night still haunts me with a clarity that time cannot dull, as if the shadows of that evening are etched permanently into my memory, refusing to fade no matter how many years pass. It began like any other, the familiar creak of the old house settling into the quiet darkness, the soft hum of distant traffic beyond the trees, and the muffled voices of my parents somewhere down the hall, speaking in hushed tones that immediately set my nerves on edge. I was younger then, innocent in ways that now feel like a fragile glass about to shatter. The secret revealed itself that night in the most devastating way, unexpected and cruel, like a storm breaking over a calm sea. I had stumbled upon something meant to remain hidden, something that tore at the very fabric of everything we believed about our family and ourselves. It was a truth so heavy, so terrifying, that it threatened to unravel the delicate threads holding us all together. I remember the cold sweat on my palms as I stood frozen, the pounding of my heart deafening in my ears, and the instinctual surge of fear that commanded me to run and forget what I had seen. But I could not unsee it, nor could I unhear the whispered words that echoed in the empty hallway, words laced with shame and regret, words that revealed betrayals and betrayals that I was never meant to know. The shock was a physical blow, knocking the breath from my lungs and leaving me trembling in the darkness. I wanted to scream, to shout the truth to the world, but the voice that came out was barely a whisper, swallowed by the night. The weight of what I had uncovered was crushing, and I realized then that my silence was not just an act of cowardice, but a choice born of love and protection. To speak would be to invite ruin upon those I held dear, to fracture the fragile peace we had built over the years. I made a vow in that moment, a promise to bury the secret deep within myself, to carry it alone so that no one else would have to suffer the consequences. It was a decision that shaped the course of my life, binding me in chains forged from fear and loyalty. I understood that some truths are like poison, capable of destroying families and futures if released recklessly. Yet the burden of that secret was a silent torment, a shadow that followed me through every smile and every gathering, a hidden fracture beneath the surface of my carefully constructed world. I wrestled with guilt for years, torn between the desire to protect my family and the aching need to confess and free myself from the weight of deception. That night marked the end of innocence and the beginning of a long, lonely journey of carrying a truth that could never be spoken aloud. The memories of that dark hour are as vivid now as they were then. The flicker of candlelight casting ominous shapes on the walls, the faint sound of a door closing softly, and the cold realization that nothing would ever be the same. The secret I found was not just a family scandal or a private pain. It was a fracture in the foundation of who we were, a wound that demanded silence as its price. And so, with a heavy heart and trembling hands, I chose to become the keeper of that silence, swearing to protect my family from the storm that truth would bring. The night that changed everything became the night I promised to take that secret to my grave. I married young, full of hope and dreams that seemed to stretch endlessly before me, unaware then of the silent burden I carried tucked deep within my heart, a secret that had taken root in the shadows of my youth and now accompanied me like a ghost into this new chapter of life. My husband, kind and steady, believed he knew me fully, but there was a part of me he never glimpsed, a locked room in my soul where the past whispered its heavy truths and where the weight of silence grew heavier with every passing day. I learned quickly that love could be both a balm and a cage, that marriage demanded not only companionship and joy, but also the quiet endurance of unspoken sorrows and untold fears. The secret I bore was a wall between us, invisible yet impenetrable, forcing me to navigate conversations carefully, to smile when my heart ached, and to create a facade of normalcy that often felt like a performance. I feared that revealing even a fragment of the truth would fracture the fragile trust we had built, that it might unravel not just our marriage, but the family we hoped to create. So I carried the secret alone, a silent sentinel guarding against the chaos I believed honesty would unleash. My children were born into this carefully constructed world, surrounded by love and laughter, yet shadowed by the invisible burden I bore. I watched them grow with a mixture of pride and dread, knowing that my silence was a fragile thread holding our family tapestry together. Every night I whispered silent prayers for strength and forgiveness, hoping that my quiet sacrifices would spare them the pain I had endured. The emotional toll was relentless. I became an expert in compartmentalization, locking away the past during the day to be fully present as a wife and mother, only to confront the ghosts of my secret in the quiet solitude of night. There were moments when the weight threatened to crush me, when tears fell unseen and my heart felt like a storm raging behind a calm facade. I envied those who lived openly, whose families were built on truth untainted by shadows. But I remained steadfast, convinced that preserving family unity was worth the cost of my own silence. The years passed in a blur of birthdays, school plays, and whispered conversations behind closed doors, the secret never spoken, but always present like a low hum beneath the noise of daily life. I told myself it was an act of love, a shield against pain, but deep down, I knew it was also fear. The fear of losing everything I cherished, the fear that the truth would bring devastation rather than healing. Yet despite the sacrifices, there were moments of quiet beauty, small victories where love and resilience flourished even in the absence of full truth. My husband's steady hand in mine, the laughter of my children echoing through the house, the warmth of shared meals and simple routines. These were the threads that held me together when the secret threatened to unravel me. As I look back now, I see how marriage became both a refuge and a crucible, a place where silence was both a burden and a gift. I kept my promise to protect my family, but I carried a private sorrow that only deepened with time. The secret shaped the woman I became, forging strength from sacrifice, and teaching me that sometimes love demands more than words. It demands endurance, courage, and the quiet hope that one day healing might find its way through even the deepest silence. Raising my children under the heavy shadow of a secret I dared never speak aloud was like walking a tightrope stretched thin over an abyss I could only see in glimpses, each step a careful balance between protecting them and preserving my own fragile sanity. The truth was always there, lurking beneath the surface of ordinary moments, silent, unyielding, a weight that pressed down on every smile I offered, every bedtime story I told. There were countless times when their innocent questions brushed too close to the edges of that hidden truth, their curious eyes searching for answers I was not prepared to give. I became skilled at steering conversations away, like a captain navigating stormy seas, redirecting their attention with gentle distractions or a quick change of subject, hoping the storm would pass without leaving a trace. But the fear was constant, a whisper in the back of my mind that one misstep, one careless word, could shatter the delicate balance we had maintained for so long. The guilt of deception settled deep within me, tangled with the fierce love I held for my children, creating an ache that no mother should have to endure. I loved them fiercely and wholly, yet I felt as though I was constructing invisible walls between us, walls built not from distance, but from the necessity of silence. Every hug carried the weight of unspoken fears, every kiss a silent plea for protection. I remember nights when I would lie awake listening to their soft breathing, my heart torn between the joy of their presence and the torment of knowing the secret that shaped our lives. The deception was not born from malice or neglect, but from a desperate desire to shield them from pain, to give them a childhood untouched by the scars I bore. Yet in that protection lay a loneliness I could never fully share. The secret was a shadow companion, following us through school recitals, family dinners, and birthday parties, unseen yet palpably present. I watched my children grow with pride and trepidation, knowing that their happiness was intertwined with my silence. The moments when the truth nearly slipped out were etched vividly in my memory. The hurried changes of subject when a question veered too close, the stammered answers that masked the truth, the fleeting expressions of confusion or suspicion that I brushed away with practiced ease. Each close call was a reminder of how precarious our peace truly was, and how the past continued to cast long, dark shadows over our present. I often wondered if they sensed the burden I carried, if they felt the invisible chains that bound our family's story in silence. The weight of my secret sometimes made me feel like a stranger in my own home, a woman divided between the roles of mother and guardian of a painful legacy. Yet in the midst of this struggle, my love remained unwavering, a beacon that guided me through the darkest nights. I found solace in the small moments, the laughter shared over breakfast, the whispered secrets exchanged under covers, the gentle reassurance in a child's touch. These fragments of joy were my refuge, a testament to the resilience of love, even when burdened by silence. As my children grew older and began to forge their own paths, I grappled with the knowledge that the secret would someday demand its reckoning, that the truth I had hidden so carefully might one day break free and reshape the family I had fought so hard to protect. Until then, I carried the weight quietly, embracing both the sacrifices and the love that defined my motherhood, hoping that one day the burden of silence would give way to healing and truth. The first cracks began as faint tremors beneath the surface of our carefully maintained family life, subtle whispers and glances that carried the weight of unspoken questions, threatening to fracture the delicate illusion I had spent years painstakingly preserving. At first, it was nothing more than a flicker of curiosity in a child's eyes, an innocent question asked with the kind of sincerity that made it impossible to deflect without stirring suspicion. I remember the moment vividly, the quiet gathering in our living room, the clink of glasses mingling with soft conversation, when my youngest, with a furrowed brow and hesitant voice, asked something that cut through the jovial atmosphere like a sudden chill. It was a question about the past, about family stories I had long buried, and the innocence behind it was both a balm and a dagger. I smiled and answered vaguely, hoping to steer the conversation away without igniting further inquiry. But I saw the flicker of doubt in their eyes, a subtle awakening to the reality that not all stories had been told. The tension that followed was palpable, an unspoken awareness hanging heavy in the air during family gatherings, where laughter no longer masked the underlying unease. Conversations that once flowed freely became cautious exchanges, words measured and weighed, as if everyone was silently holding their breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I felt the fragile facade I had built beginning to wobble, like a porcelain vase perched precariously on the edge of a shelf, ready to shatter with the slightest nudge. Anxiety settled deep in my bones, a cold knot tightening with every glance exchanged across the room, every pause pregnant with meaning. I found myself walking a treacherous path, striving to hold the family together, even as the very foundations threatened to crumble. I tried to maintain the routines and rituals that had always been our anchors, the Sunday dinners, the birthday celebrations, the holiday traditions. But beneath these familiar patterns lurked a growing undercurrent of doubt and suspicion. The secret that had once been safely tucked away was now casting long shadows across every interaction, coloring smiles with hesitation and silences with unasked questions. My heart ached with the knowledge that the truth, like a dormant volcano awakening, was stirring beneath us, its pressure building toward an inevitable eruption. I tried to mask my own fear with practiced calm, to project strength and stability even as the walls closed in around me. Each whispered conversation I overheard felt like a small tremor shaking the ground beneath my feet, each sideways glance a reminder that the past was no longer a distant memory, but a living, breathing presence, demanding reckoning. I wrestled with the urge to confide in someone, to share the burden that had grown heavier with every passing day, but the fear of betrayal and the potential devastation kept my lips sealed. The family's fragile peace was my responsibility, and I bore it alone. As the cracks widened, I found myself retreating inward, withdrawing behind a mask of politeness and smiles, afraid that any misstep might send everything crashing down. The secret had become a living thing, twisting and turning within the hearts of those who sensed it, and I could only hope that I could navigate this treacherous terrain without losing those I loved most. The first cracks were not just fractures in the facade. They were a warning that the past could no longer be contained, that the silence was breaking, and that the moment of truth was drawing near. My granddaughter's curiosity crept in like the first light of dawn, soft yet persistent, illuminating corners of my carefully guarded world I had hoped would remain forever in shadow. And with each question she posed, my heart both ached and fluttered with a mix of pride and dread. She was unlike anyone I had ever known, a bright spark with eyes that held the promise of discovery and a spirit unafraid to ask what others might avoid. Our moments together were often quiet, nestled in the worn armchair by the window, or walking slowly through the garden where the scents of blooming flowers carried memories I dared not voice aloud. She would lean in close, her voice barely above a whisper, asking about the stories of our family, about the people who came before her, and about the secrets that seemed to hang in the air like a delicate mist. Her questions were gentle probes, each one peeling back layers of silence I had wrapped myself in for so long, and while I treasured her eagerness, it unsettled me deeply. The tender moments we shared, her small hand resting on mine, the way she looked at me with unguarded trust, only made the conflict within me more profound, for I wanted to shield her from pain, even as I longed to be honest and free from the heavy chains of secrecy. I found myself caught in a delicate dance, balancing between nurturing her inquisitive nature and protecting her innocence, crafting stories that satisfied her without unraveling the truth I carried like a hidden wound. The warmth of her laughter and the brightness of her eyes were like sunlight filtering through a cracked window, offering hope and light, yet reminding me of the fragile barrier between us that the secret created. There were nights when she would confide in me, her voice trembling with the weight of unspoken questions, and I would hold her close, feeling the pull of my own memories mingling with her youthful yearning for answers. I saw in her the courage I had long suppressed, the strength to face the unknown, and it both inspired and terrified me. How could I protect her from the shadows when she was drawn to them like a moth to a flame? The conflict grew with every story she begged me to tell, every glance that lingered too long, every hesitation that betrayed the depth of her yearning. I wanted to be the grandmother who could share all the joys and sorrows of our family's past, to offer her the gift of truth without the burden of pain. But I was shackled by the promises I had made long ago, by the fear that unveiling the secret would fracture the delicate bonds we had nurtured. Sometimes I would catch myself watching her as she explored the world with wide-eyed wonder, and I would marvel at the resilience and hope she embodied. She was a new generation, unburdened by the weight of silence, yet still entwined in the legacy I struggled to reconcile. The moments of tenderness between us, the gentle smiles, the whispered stories, the shared silences, were bittersweet, as I yearned to protect her while knowing that the truth, like a river beneath ice, would eventually find its way to the surface. My granddaughter's growing curiosity was a mirror reflecting my own inner turmoil, a reminder that the past could not remain buried forever, and that love sometimes demands the courage to face even the darkest truths together. The moment the wedding invitation arrived, its delicate cream paper embossed with gold lettering, a flood of memories crashed over me like a tide I had long tried to keep at bay. stirring echoes of a past, I thought, carefully buried beneath layers of silence and time. Holding the invitation in my trembling hands, I felt the weight, not just of the upcoming celebration, but of the history that intertwined with this joyous occasion. A history tangled with secrets, hidden pain, and promises made in shadows. As I traced the elegant script, I was suddenly transported back to old drawers in the attic, where forgotten letters lay folded and yellowed, their edges worn like the fragile threads of a long-forgotten story waiting to be told. Photographs surfaced in my mind, faded images of faces both familiar and distant, their smiles frozen in moments that concealed more than they revealed. These relics of my family's past beckoned with a haunting insistence, reminding me that no matter how tightly I clutched the silence, the truth lingered, restless and unresolved. The invitation was more than just a call to celebrate my granddaughter's new beginning. It was a summons to confront the shadows I had evaded for so long. The quiet moments that followed were filled with a turbulent mix of fear and longing, the ache of a secret that had shaped my entire life, demanding recognition and reckoning. I wrestled with the choice that lay before me, whether to preserve the fragile peace we had painstakingly constructed through silence, or to finally break the chains of secrecy that had bound us, risking the upheaval that truth might bring. The silence that had once seemed protective now felt like a prison, its walls closing in with each passing day, suffocating the possibility of healing and freedom. The letters, the photographs, and the memories they unlocked were a mirror reflecting the complexity of my journey, a journey marked by love and loss, courage and fear. I found myself torn between the desire to protect my family from pain and the conviction that genuine love demands honesty, no matter how difficult. The thought of speaking the truth at this moment, amidst the celebration of new beginnings, filled me with both dread and hope. Could the revelation be a cleansing storm, washing away old wounds and clearing the path for a future built on trust? Or would it be a tempest that shattered the fragile bonds that held us together? The invitation became a symbol of this crossroads, a tangible reminder that the past is never truly past, and that the stories we bury beneath the surface have a way of resurfacing when least expected. I spent nights poring over the letters, their fragile pages whispering secrets that had shaped generations. I traced the faded handwriting with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of promises broken and loyalties tested. Each photograph held a story, a moment frozen in time, inviting me to look deeper, to see beyond the smiles into the truths hidden behind them. The past was no longer a distant memory, but a living presence, challenging me to face it with courage and honesty. As the days passed and the wedding drew nearer, I felt the tension rising within me, a growing resolve mingled with apprehension. The invitation had opened a door I could not close, and now I stood at the threshold, ready or not, to decide whether to speak the truth and risk everything, or to remain silent and carry the burden alone a little longer. The days leading up to the wedding were thick with a tension that crept silently through the house like a gathering storm. Its presence felt in the stiff smiles, the clipped conversations, and the quick, sidelong glances exchanged between relatives who had long learned to mask their unease behind polite facades. As the family came together, each person carried their own quiet burdens, and beneath the surface, I sensed the secret's shadow stretching longer and darker, casting an unspoken pall over the joyous occasion we were supposed to be celebrating. It was in the subtle moments, the tightening of a jaw when a name was mentioned, the hurried change of topic when past grievances threatened to surface, the strained laughter that felt more like a plea for normalcy, that I saw how deeply the truth had burrowed into the fabric of our lives. The air seemed charged with anticipation, as if everyone was waiting for something to break the fragile calm, and I found myself caught between relief and dread, knowing that the moment of reckoning was drawing near. My own internal struggle grew fiercer with each passing day, the weight of the secret pressing harder against my chest, making every breath a conscious effort to maintain control. I questioned how much longer I could carry this burden alone, how much longer I could protect my family with silence when the truth clawed at the edges of our carefully constructed world. The once familiar halls of our family home now echoed with a restless energy, as if the walls themselves were whispering warnings, reminding me that secrets, no matter how deeply buried, demand to be heard. I observed the interactions around me with a heightened awareness, reading between the lines of conversations and catching glimpses of old wounds that had never fully healed. Family members who once seemed distant now appeared more guarded, their smiles strained, their eyes clouded with memories best left forgotten. The wedding preparations, which should have been filled with joy and excitement, were tinged with an undercurrent of anxiety, a reminder that beneath the celebration lay unresolved conflicts and unspoken truths. I felt the burden of responsibility as the matriarch, the keeper of our family's history and its hidden pain. The secret that had shaped my life now threatened to unravel the bonds that held us together, and I grappled with the fear that my silence might no longer be enough. The thought of revealing the truth was both terrifying and liberating. A promise of freedom weighed against the risk of shattering everything I had fought to protect. As the wedding day approached, I found solace in quiet moments of reflection, searching for the strength to face whatever consequences might come. I wondered if my family was ready for the truth, if they could bear the weight of the past and still find a way to heal. The air was thick with possibility and peril, and I stood at the crossroads of silence and confession, knowing that the days ahead would change us all forever. The day of reckoning was no longer a distant threat, but an inevitable arrival, and I braced myself to confront the storm I had long feared, hoping that love would endure beyond the shadows of secrets finally brought to light. The wedding ceremony unfolded like a dream, painted in soft hues of gold and white. The sunlight streaming through the stained glass, casting kaleidoscopic patterns over the polished wood, and the sea of faces gathered to witness a moment filled with promise and love. The bride moved gracefully down the aisle, her smile radiant and genuine, a beacon of hope and new beginnings that seemed to light the room with an almost sacred glow. The air was thick with the scent of fresh roses and the gentle hum of whispered blessings, the soft melodies of the choir weaving through the space like a soothing balm for all present. As vows were exchanged, promises made, and rings slipped onto eager fingers, a collective sigh of joy seemed to ripple through the crowd, a shared celebration of a love that had blossomed against the odds. Yet beneath the surface of this joyous occasion, my heart beat with a tumultuous rhythm, a storm held at bay by a fragile veneer of composure. Each smile I offered felt like a mask, carefully crafted to hide the tempest swirling within me, the weight of a secret poised to shatter this idyllic moment and the lives entwined within it. I found myself caught in a delicate dance between the celebration before me and the reckoning looming just beyond the horizon, the joyous laughter mingling with the silent cries of a past I had carried too long. As the ceremony progressed, I watched my granddaughter with a mixture of pride and sorrow, marveling at her strength and beauty even as I grappled with the knowledge that the truth I held could change everything in an instant. The soft murmur of prayers and the tender embrace of family felt both comforting and cruel, reminding me of what was at stake and the fragile bonds that could be broken by the unveiling of what I had hidden for so many years. The music swelled, voices lifted in hymns of hope, and for a moment I allowed myself to believe in the possibility of joy unmarred by shadows. Yet the undercurrent of tension never left me, a silent whisper that kept my senses sharp and my resolve firm. I noticed the subtle shifts in the crowd, the tightened jaws, the quick glances exchanged, the sudden stillness that followed a particularly poignant vow. These small cracks in the perfect facade reminded me that beneath the surface, the past was stirring, ready to break free and reshape the future. In those fleeting moments between the rituals and the celebrations, I felt the heavy gravity of my choice settling over me like a shroud. To remain silent was to betray the love I held for my family, but to speak was to risk unraveling the very fabric of our lives. I recalled the years of sacrifice, the quiet nights spent wrestling with fear and hope, and the promise I had made to myself to protect, to preserve, and yet to be true when the time came. As the ceremony drew to a close and the final blessings were spoken, I felt the crossroad before me more keenly than ever. The path I chose next would define not only my future, but the legacy we would leave behind. The joyous celebration was both a culmination and a beginning, a moment suspended in time where love and truth stood poised to meet. My heart, heavy yet hopeful, beat steadily as I prepared to step into the unknown, to reveal the secret I had sworn to take to the grave, and to face the consequences with courage born of love and necessity. As the reception hummed with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses, I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me like a tide ready to break. And when my name was called to raise a toast, I took the microphone with hands that trembled, not from fear alone, but from the gravity of the truth I was about to reveal. The room, filled with familiar faces lit by warm chandeliers and framed by elegant decorations, seemed to hold its breath as I began to speak. The usual words of congratulations and well wishes caught in my throat, replaced instead by a carefully woven narrative that peeled back the layers of silence surrounding the secret I had carried for so long. I chose each phrase with the precision of a surgeon, knowing that these words would cut deep and change the course of our family forever. The light chatter dimmed, replaced by a profound stillness as the faces around me transformed from joy to disbelief, their eyes wide, mouths slightly agape, absorbing the weight of the revelation like a sudden storm disrupting a calm sea. I spoke of the hidden truths, of the pain and sacrifice buried beneath years of smiles and celebrations, of the promises made in shadows to protect those I loved. My voice, steady despite the tremors inside, carried the burden of decades, echoing in the silence that stretched like a chasm between us. Some looked away, unable to meet the gaze of the woman who had shattered the illusion of perfection. Others leaned forward, their expressions a complex tapestry of shock, sorrow, and the tentative flicker of understanding. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as the secret spilled into the open air, no longer confined to whispers and shadows. I saw my husband's face pale, his eyes searching mine for answers he had never sought before, and my children's stunned expressions caught between disbelief and the dawning realization that their history was more complicated than they had imagined. The guests, once united in celebration, now stood on the precipice of a new and uncertain reality, their murmurs growing into a quiet chorus of questions and emotions that rippled through the crowd like the first tremors of an earthquake. I felt the fragile threads of family unraveling and reforming in real time, the raw edges of truth cutting through the carefully woven fabric of our shared past. In that moment, I understood that the silence had been a fragile shield, and now that it was broken, the healing we needed would be as painful as it was necessary. The courage it took to speak was met with both gratitude and grief, And though I knew not all hearts would be ready to forgive or understand, I held fast to the belief that honesty was the first step toward redemption. The toast that I had intended to be a simple gesture of love and hope had become a declaration of truth, a turning point that would forever change the course of our lives. As I lowered the microphone, the weight of what I had unleashed settled over me like a heavy fog, but beneath it lay a flicker of relief, a hope that the light of revelation would one day mend the fractures left by decades of silence. The room remained hushed, the echoes of my words lingering in the air, a testament to the power of truth to both divide and unite. In that charged silence, I felt the stirrings of a new beginning, fragile and uncertain but real, born from the courage to face the past and embrace whatever future awaited us all. The room fell into a stunned silence that felt thick enough to touch, as the words I had spoken hung heavily in the air, like an unexpected storm breaking over a calm sea. And I watched with a mixture of dread and a strange, tentative hope as the faces around me began to change, each one a canvas of raw, unfiltered emotion that revealed the fractures beneath years of quiet endurance. Some family members looked as though the ground had shifted beneath their feet, eyes wide with disbelief, mouths slightly open as if searching for words that could make the revelation less real, less painful. Others clenched their jaws, a flicker of anger igniting behind their eyes, the betrayal cutting deep as if a knife had been twisted into old wounds long thought to be healed. I saw my husband's face pale, the trust he had placed in our carefully constructed past unraveling before him, and my children's expressions shift between shock and sorrow, as the truth I had kept locked away reshaped their understanding of who we were. The quiet murmurs began to swell into a chorus of whispered accusations, tentative questions, and heartfelt confessions, a cacophony that mirrored the turmoil rising within me. The safe walls of the family I had known seemed to tremble, and yet amidst the chaos, there were moments of unexpected tenderness and understanding that took me by surprise. Some relatives reached out, their eyes shining with unshed tears and the beginnings of forgiveness, recognizing the courage it took to speak what had been silenced for so long. Old wounds, though reopened and raw, also became pathways to healing as stories long buried were shared, and truths previously hidden found their voice. The anger was fierce and justified, but it was tempered by a shared desire to mend the fractures, to find a way forward despite the pain. I felt the tension crackle like electricity in the air, a volatile mix of emotions that threatened to ignite into irreparable conflict, but also held the promise of reconciliation. It was a paradox of human connection, where betrayal and relief, bitterness and compassion collided and coexisted in the fragile space between past and future. I remembered the years of silence, the nights spent alone with the secret gnawing at my conscience, and I understood that this moment was both an end and a beginning, a painful reckoning that had to come before peace could take root. As voices rose and fell, some turning accusatory, others offering solace, I realized that the family we had been was no more, replaced by a new, rawer version of itself, shaped by truth and the willingness to confront it. The faces around me were a mirror of my own journey, marked by pain, resilience, and the tentative hope that love could endure beyond the fractures of betrayal. In that room, filled with grief and grace, I found a strange comfort in the chaos, knowing that the path to healing was long and uncertain, but necessary. The relief that mingled with sorrow was a balm, a quiet affirmation that despite everything, we could still choose to rebuild, to forgive, and to move forward together. The echoes of that night would linger for years to come, but so would the strength we found in facing the truth, a testament to the power of honesty to both wound and mend. The revelation I had laid bare during the wedding toast sent ripples far beyond that room, reaching into corners of our family that had long lain dormant beneath a fragile peace, stirring old resentments that had been carefully suppressed and unsettling alliances that once seemed unbreakable. I watched with a heavy heart as the shockwaves of truth wove through our lives, unraveling the carefully stitched tapestry of relationships and forcing us all to confront the fractures hidden beneath years of silence. Some relatives withdrew into the safety of distance, retreating behind walls of anger and denial as if to shield themselves from a pain too sharp to bear, while others sought out the broken pieces, extending trembling hands in gestures of reconciliation and hope. The fragile bonds that held us together were tested, strained by the weight of long-buried emotions now exposed to the light. I saw siblings who had once been close now speak with caution, their voices tinged with suspicion or regret, and cousins who had been strangers now find common ground in the shared experience of upheaval. The past, once a silent spectre lurking in the background, had become a living force reshaping our present and casting uncertain shadows over our future. I felt the sting of old wounds reopened, the bitter taste of memories that refused to fade. And yet, beneath the pain, was the faint glimmer of something necessary and true, the cleansing fire that burns away pretense and forces growth. The upheaval was not merely destructive, it was transformative, a painful but vital reckoning that challenged us to redefine what family meant beyond the illusions of perfection. I reflected on how the secret had shaped our lives in ways we had never fully understood until it was exposed, how it had created unspoken divides, fostered misunderstandings, and silenced voices that longed to be heard. The ripple effect extended into unexpected places, touching friendships forged outside the family, altering dynamics and prompting conversations that had been avoided for years. Some family members embraced the opportunity for honesty and healing, finding strength in vulnerability and a renewed commitment to one another. Others struggled to reconcile the woman I had been with the woman I had become, caught between loyalty to the past and the demands of truth. I knew that the path forward would be neither easy nor straightforward, that forgiveness would not come quickly, and that trust would have to be rebuilt brick by brick. Yet amidst the turmoil, I found solace in the realization that the upheaval was a necessary birth, a painful yet hopeful emergence from the shadows into the light. The truth's ripple was far-reaching and relentless, but it was also a call to courage, compassion, and renewal. As I witnessed the shifting tides within my family, I understood that healing required patience and grace, and that the fractures we faced were opportunities for deeper connection rather than final divisions. The journey was only beginning, but I felt a quiet strength in knowing that honesty had set us on a course toward authenticity and freedom. The ripples would continue to spread, touching lives and hearts in ways both beautiful and challenging, but they carried with them the promise of transformation, the chance to rebuild not on secrets and silence, but on truth and love. In the slow aftermath of my revelation, the sharp edges of anger and hurt began to dull, replaced by tentative steps toward healing that unfolded like the fragile unfurling of new leaves after a harsh winter, delicate yet full of promise. The silence that had once settled heavily between us was broken by conversations long avoided, voices cautiously reaching out across the divides that the secret had carved into our family's heart. Apologies were spoken with trembling sincerity, words that carried the weight of regret and the hope of mending what had been broken. I watched as my family, battered yet resilient, began to face the truths we had so long evaded, and in doing so, They found the courage to forgive, not because the past could be erased, but because the bonds of love demanded a willingness to move forward despite the scars. My granddaughter, whose curiosity had sparked the chain of events leading to this reckoning, became a beacon of this newfound grace, embodying the possibility of choosing compassion over division and understanding over judgment. Her eyes, once filled with questions that unsettled me, now shone with a maturity and empathy that gave me hope for the future. The fragile peace that emerged was like the first light of dawn filtering through clouds, tentative but undeniable, a sign that even the deepest wounds could begin to close with time and care. Family dinners resumed with a gentler rhythm, conversations flowing more freely, though still tinged with the memory of what had been revealed. The weight of secrecy lifted slightly from our shoulders, replaced by a collective effort to rebuild trust and foster openness. I felt the transformation, not just in the words spoken, but in the silences shared, those quiet moments of understanding that need no explanation. There were still challenges ahead, moments when the past cast long shadows and old fears resurfaced, but the resolve to face them together was stronger than ever. I found myself reflecting on the power of vulnerability, the strength that comes from admitting pain and seeking forgiveness, and the profound grace that flows when we choose love over resentment. Healing, I realized, was not a destination, but a journey, a delicate process requiring patience, humility, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. In witnessing my family's journey, I saw a microcosm of the human experience, the eternal dance between darkness and light, brokenness and wholeness. The story we shared was no longer one of silence and secrets, but one of resilience and renewal. It was a testament to the unyielding power of connection and the hope that even the deepest wounds can be transformed by empathy and understanding. As the days passed, I embraced the quiet moments of peace with gratitude, knowing they were hard-won and fragile. I watched as my granddaughter, now a woman shaped by both truth and forgiveness, stepped confidently into her own future, carrying with her the lessons of our family's past. The legacy we would leave was no longer shadowed by hidden pain, but illuminated by the light of healing and hope. In this awakening, I found my own heart softened and strengthened, grateful that after years of carrying the secret alone, I could finally witness the healing it had set into motion. The journey was far from over, but the promise of peace was real, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe in a future where love could triumph over silence, and truth could be the foundation of all we built together. In the quiet that settled after the storm of revelation and reckoning, I found a peace that had long eluded me, a stillness born not of forgetfulness, but of release. The heavy burden I had carried for so many years finally lifted, leaving space for healing and hope to take root. The future of our family now stretched before us like an uncharted landscape, uncertain and fragile, yet brimming with possibility, like the first soft buds of spring daring to break through winter's last frost. I saw the faces of those I loved, my children, my grandchildren, etched with both the weight of what had been endured and the quiet courage to move forward, to rewrite the story that had shaped us all. The legacy we inherited was no longer one of silence and secrets, but a tapestry rewoven with threads of truth, forgiveness, and love. It became clear to me that the act of confronting the past, painful though it was a profound gift to those who would come after us, a shield against the shadows that had once threatened to consume us, and a beacon lighting a path toward authenticity and freedom. In reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this moment, I understood that truth is both a burden and a liberation. a force that demands bravery and compassion in equal measure. Love, I realized, is not about perfection or denial, but about embracing the whole, the light and the dark, the joy and the sorrow, and choosing to stand together despite it all. The decision to speak our truth was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unbreakable bonds of family. It was an acknowledgement that while the past cannot be changed, its power over us can be diminished when we face it with honesty and grace. I thought of my granddaughter, now stepping into her own life with a strength born from the courage we found in each other, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude that she would inherit a story not of shame and silence, but of courage and renewal. The path ahead remains unknown, and there will undoubtedly be challenges and moments of doubt. But I carry a quiet confidence that we can navigate them together, united by the lessons we have learned and the love that endures. My heart is lighter, knowing that the secret I once swore to take to the grave has become a catalyst for change and healing, a legacy transformed from one of pain to one of hope. The family we are becoming is not defined by the shadows of the past, but by the light we choose to create. In this new chapter, I find peace not in forgetting, but in remembering with courage, in loving without condition, and in protecting future generations through the honesty we have embraced. The story of our family is still being written, and I am humbled to have played a part in turning the page toward a future where truth and love guide us forward. As I look back on the years of silence and the journey toward this moment of awakening, I understand that legacy is not only what we inherit, but what we choose to pass on. And with that choice comes both responsibility and hope. The storm has passed, the air is clearer, and the seeds of renewal have been sown. I am ready to watch them grow,